I told these speakers when I sent them their confirmation email last Friday that no pressure, but you are the most popular session in the whole symposium, so don't blow it. Now, I'm Mary Peterman again, for those that don't know me. Seems like I was just here. So we are really, really, really excited and honored to have this group of speakers with us today to talk about financial management in the 21st century, that future vision. So I'm going to introduce you to our panelists to my left. Immediately to my left is Adam Goldberg. He is the Executive Architect at the Office of Financial Innovation and Transformation, otherwise known as FIT, at the Treasury Department's Bureau of the Fiscal Service. Within FIT, he supports financial management transformation initiatives that lead to government-wide efficiencies. He also serves as a Treasury advisor to the Minister of Economy and Finance in the Republic of Guinea. Wow, I didn't know that. Where he supports the minister's efforts to improve cash management. Adam joined Treasury after spending 6 years at the Office of Management and Budget as the chief of the Financial Analysis and Systems Branch, where he was responsible for policy development and oversight to implement financial systems, reduce improper payments, and right-size real property. Immediately to his left is Andrea Simpanis. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Okay. She is the Innovations Operations Manager for the Office of Shared Solutions and Performance Improvement at GSA. She brings her experience in both public and private sector shared services and federal financial management. She leads the Modernization and Migration Management M3 framework for the Office of Unified Shared Services Management, USSM. M3 has been instrumental in helping agencies across the government buy services and share systems. Previously, she was a senior manager at Deloitte supporting ICE, Internal Revenue Service, and the U.S. Navy. Thank you for being with us, Andrea. Immediately to her left, good morning, Dorsey, is Dorsey Yaffe. She has over 11 years' experience in enacting programs, developing policies, and executing implementation strategies and startup operations in the public and private sectors. She currently serves as Associate Director in the Office of Shared Solutions and Performance Improvement at GSA, leading the Fed-to-Fed Solutions team. Prior to that, she was Deputy Director of the Unified Shared Services Management, the first cross-functional office dedicated to developing and leading the implementation of the vision for shared services government-wide. And finally, down at the end of the row, I needed someone from DHS to talk about financial systems modernization, so I looked on the street and found Christine. Our very own and very honored Christine Rodriguez, who did not give me a bio, so I'm going to fly by the seat of my pants to tell you that she is the head of the newly formed, though it really isn't that new anymore. It's almost a year old, right? Or a little more than. Financial Systems Modernization Joint Program Management Office at the Department of Homeland Security. Christine has a really, really, really big job, and that is to harness all of the innovation efforts and participate as an active stakeholder in all the efforts that all of these people are involved with, while at the same time trying to meet all of the component requirements for financial systems, standardizing our business processes, and leveraging all that we have to offer in systems and software to make sure we are efficient and effective stewards of taxpayer dollars at the department. All of these panelists are willing to just let me ask questions off the cuff, not at all prepared. No, a few prepared questions. I wanted to spend some time, and what I challenge them with is there's a whole lot of stuff going on across government in this space about systems modernization, shared services, the president's management agenda, the DHS FSM modernization, FIT's use cases, a lot of the work OMB's doing, everything USSM is doing in identifying shared solutions, potentially software as a service. Does all of this fit together? You know, that was my number one question, and I think they're going to help us put all those pieces together and how all of these efforts really are leading in exactly the same direction and the same path. So, I have some questions. I'll start, I guess, with Dorsey. To set the stage of why the heck this is even important, this concept of sharing quality service, we do note it as a key priority in the President's management agenda. Can you share with us why this is an important cross-agency priority goal?
Sure. So thank you all so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here with all these panelists who've all worked together at different points in time for many years now, and also to be here with DHS, because DHS has been a key partner to us as this new strategy has come out. And I know everyone who's doing it is doing it in addition to their day jobs. So whether it's helping to develop standards or with the market research days, and kind of sharing all the lessons learned of your experiences, good and bad, right, over the past years with financial management, with past shared services efforts. It's all really helped to inform what we're doing, and the voice of the customer and DHS and agencies' needs has been very informative and definitely all taken into consideration and tried to be incorporated in this vision that's set forth going forward, right, so that it can be successful. And that we can be more efficient and effective and more can go towards mission. So thank you all so much for everything you've done and continue to do. So in terms of what this vision is, right, why does it matter? It matters because hopefully when it's implemented, and it's a long-term vision, right, it's not going to be overnight. I think the CAP goal sets out a 10-year vision with milestones to get there along the way. And progress, but it's because change does take time, right? And we have to make some investments and make some changes, right, to then reap the benefits, right, of that, Sharon. And we hope that this will be successful. We believe it will be because it's really based upon 3 different principles. That's looking at kind of what has and hasn't worked in the government in the past, and also what's happening in industry that we can leverage, right? And the first is really it's all about the standards work, and right, agreeing upon what we want, kind of what those capabilities are, what our requirements are, right, so that we can get those economies of scale. You may have heard a term called FIBF, Federal Integrated Business Framework, for the government, so we like to make up new acronyms, right, but that's really the standards. FIT has really been leading the way in financial management. Jeff Bobich from DHS has been leading the agency working group as well to make sure that all agencies' needs, right, are being met on that, and that's really important. And it's not just being done for financial management, it's being done across the board for the mission support services, because one of the things that we learned is we need to do this end to end. All these different, whether it's financial management, travel, acquisition, right, they all intersect, and looking at things in stovepipes, right, wasn't working. And so there's also a lot of work from your colleagues in the procurement shop. Soraya's shop is actually leading a lot of the way with the procurement standards that are being developed now too, to make sure that there's complete kind of end-to-end standards, right, that can be leveraged so that we can get those economies of scale, because if not, we're going to end up in the same situation, right, that we are today if we don't use them, where we have over 40 different financial management systems. There was 2 contracts that were put in place for travel, right, by GSA, my agency, right, right, and they noticed there were 2, and they're like, this is going to be great, right, and now there's like 47 different instances, right, from those 2 contracts because there weren't standards, right, that were being adhered to, right, and we ourselves as government weren't making sure that we were following those standards, right, and so right now standards are being developed, and we're really trying to engage all that FIT is engaged in all the agencies to make sure that they do meet the agency's needs so that we can use them to then go and buy solutions, right, because we also don't want to be in the business, right, of building our own solutions anymore. There's too much other stuff, right, going on. We don't need to worry about building the systems and maintaining it, right, when we can buy that, right, from industry and focus more on the analysis and all the different financial management things. And so that's another key part of this, is to go to modern solutions. We don't want to go backwards. I know sometimes I was in a meeting last week and I've heard it from other people prior, right, and talking with agencies where they've gone to a shared service and a process that had been automated before, right, is now manual, right, and that doesn't work, right, that's not okay. Right, and so that's one of our guiding principles. And Andrea, a little bit later, is going to talk more about the financial management kind of market research days that happened. That Stacy here was leading on behalf of the CFO Council, and to see what was out there, right, and what we can buy based on these standards. Because one of the other big things that we heard is that if you want to, right, people talk about the benefits of shared services, and when all these companies, right, who are coming and demoing their systems, were saying if you don't adopt the standards, you're not going to get, right, any of those benefits. You're not going to get the economies of scale. So it's really important that you do those, right, and you get those right, and then you can go and buy, right, some of these modern solutions, right, that are innovative. And lastly, in terms of the strategy, and this I think is so critical, and I know hopefully it will resonate with all of you because I know you all have experienced it, but I really have to create a marketplace that meets agencies' needs, right? One size does not fit all, right? And it's not going to one place and this is what it is, right? This is the only technology available, and you have to use this acquisition system, right? And that's it. We need flexibility, right? Agencies do have different needs, right? And we need to figure out how to meet them. That doesn't mean we have 47, right? So we have to have some limited choice so we can get those economies of scale. but we need those flexibilities. And so we need to say if an agency, for example, just wants a system, right? You have the people, you just want the system, right? You can do that. Or you just finished a big modernization, you've made an investment, right? You're good. You don't need a system. You just want people because you're having a hard time hiring people, right? And people are retiring, right? You can get that, or you can get both. And within those options, you don't go and it's one solution offering for the system, for example, right? It's technology as a service with multiple right? Limited options underneath, because different solutions do meet different agencies' needs. So that's a key part of kind of the strategy, and all of this we're looking forward to, right? To partnering with industry, right? To do it as well, because there are lots of innovative, right, and cool things. I think Adam's going to talk about some of them that are happening later as well, that we want to make sure that we as a government are getting the benefit of, so we can be modernized.
Thanks, Darcy. I think it was the Comptroller General told Coast Guard with their 3 general ledgers that more is not better, right? More is not necessarily better. That's right. So good to hear that we're moving in the direction of consolidating while allowing some flexibility and agility to meet specific agency needs, because we're not all the same size. So Andrea, many of our components out here, many of the people in the room provided input for this shared services readiness assessment that we asked them to give us their FTEs, contract information, current states of our systems, lots of good data stuff. So could you tell us a little bit about why that data was being collected, how it's going to be used, how it's going to form some tools, or, we've been down this road before. Mm-hmm. It's not our first time out of the gate. So, also offer us if there's any new innovation or tools to help us.
Yeah. First, thank you all for participating in the readiness assessment. We know that was not easy. There's a lot of data in there. The reason why we even had the readiness assessment, and I say we, being from GSA, we are asked to help OMB because the President's Management Council had decided that they did not want to take a sledgehammer anymore with shared services. They wanted to look at things, have data to make smart decisions, and instead they wanted to use a scalpel and correctly, Dorsey mentioned several times, one size doesn't fit all. So exactly where is everyone in the process? How ready are they? How ready are they? What's their data? What are their timelines? And we really needed all of the information in that readiness assessment to understand that. Dorsey also mentioned the standards. That was the key baseline, our basis of that readiness assessment. It listed all of the different capabilities that, again, thanks to Adam's team, they were drafted for us to try to understand how far off are those standards. Can those be used to leverage for a future software as a service procurement? How ready is the organization overall, and what do your system timelines look like? For DHS, I know it was a major pull because there are several different pieces of DHS, right, and many different systems that are running and contracts supporting those. And I think I want to highlight too that with the PMA, this new Sharing Quality Services cap goal, it really is, the President's Management Council is really focused on what's right overall, not trying to shove everyone into the same thing. The flexibility is something you'll hear, I think there's 7 different financial management systems in DHS, maybe we can get that down a little bit, right? HHS, I think, went from 7 to 3, and that was a great thing. Kudos to them. It was not easy, and I'll tell you some tools later about how to help get you through that. But the point is, we really need the data to help the OMB make those decisions to really prove to them why people need to go at this differently. So hopefully you took that seriously and gave us some really strong data. That was done for financial management. You probably saw that, but also there were questions around HR, travel, contract closeout and acquisition, and e-invoicing, correct. I know there's some grants people possibly here. Grants is also one that the standards are being worked. I'm part of that that working group team, and so that could potentially be a future version for that. As we continue to look, as you define standards, how can we continue to use those to consolidate the number of systems we have? Because the more systems we have, the more we have to maintain it, and it's really those maintenance costs that's really driving up the cost, as well as making it more difficult to secure. So that's overall for the readiness assessment. Hopefully I answered that question. If not, happy to take more questions. As far as tools that can help you, in my bio you mentioned I lead the Modernization and Migration Management, M3 framework. In the framework, there is a playbook that is all online. Please know it is a very interactive tool. Almost everything you can click on. Folks don't always realize that. Our framework really focuses on a 6-phase process that really takes a migration chronologically. And I should say, I'm using the word migration. You don't have to be going to a shared service provider, to IBC or whoever, to use this. If you're doing an internal consolidation, it's still very valuable. It's the way to look at how do I really set the vision correctly up front with all the key stakeholders in the room, work to set those standards that I'm going to try to have everyone aligned to. The biggest, one of the biggest pitfalls we find agencies doing is they try to align their future state around their current old processes, which, I mean, those could be going back 20 years. There's so much innovation that's happened in the private sector that if you go back and you start with, well, how do I do it now? Let me just write my requirements that way. You're going to get a system that looks like what you have right now that you probably don't really love. It definitely doesn't look like the user-friendly interface that you see and you come to expect in your personal life. So the way we, or I should say Adam's team has written those capabilities is really looking for the outcomes. And I think Christine will talk later about some amazing work she's doing within DHS to get everyone to sort of come to those standards. Or if they're not there, and maybe the standards need to be updated and be brought up so they work for everyone. We understand everyone's not the same. It's not going to be 100% everyone hits that same standard, but we think that we are more alike than we are different. I guarantee you within DHS, the different agencies are way more alike than you are different. I spent several years at ICE. I was ISO-FM. I don't know if anyone here today is from there, but a very enjoyable part of my life. We helped to get the first clean audit, very excited. Anyways, but the point is just really thinking through how can you re-engineer those processes. And in the framework, the playbook, it gives you a lot of tools and templates that are already baked to provide you that guidance. We are happy to do training. DHS, a large group, just came to one of our training we offer, but I often go into agencies and do that training to walk through the framework. We have many times brought in small agencies and connected them with shared service providers or gone to internal agencies that are doing internal consolidation and help them think through that. So we're really happy to help in any way. As part of Dorsey's thing, the official name is now Fed to Fed Solutions. It really is all government coming to all government to truly give you that sort of really truly objective support. And it's really great when we do our trainings that it is only Fed because there's questions that come up around contracting, et cetera. So we're happy to help there.
Excellent, thank you. So Adam, your fan club's been just giving you all kinds of glory throughout this presentation so far. Talking about those standard business processes and requirements, I remember way back in the days of 1308, that we kind of went out there and said, okay, here's the solution, let's all do it, and we didn't quite get the standard requirements and business processes. I know that your team has been at the helm of doing that. So could you talk to us a little bit about FIT's role, what you've been doing related to standardization and how it's going? What's the status?
Sure thing. Thank you. And good morning, everybody. So just a couple things just to kind of tie some stuff together. So I've had the opportunity to work with DHS for many years in the government, but actually to date myself, one of my first projects when I was a consultant was with the Immigration and Naturalization Service, helping them to fix a lot of accounting issues. Sometimes they were data entry issues, and at that point in time, actually, I was working with them when they were buying the original, is it FFMS is what they call it, system back. I think everyone can probably figure out the date, but I won't have to highlight it for you. So I've had the opportunity to work with DHS and agencies that became part of DHS over the years. What I want to do this morning is talk about three things. The first, I want to give you a bit of an overview of FIT. Second, I want to talk to you about the standards themselves. And then lastly, I want to talk about the governance of that information, because I think it's something that is important to know, but also understand how DHS is participating in these activities. But first, a question for the audience, which is, when you build a house, what is that house built on? Foundation, exactly. So when we talk about things that are happening and we talk about standards, it's basically the foundation of everything that we do. And if that foundation isn't strong, then there is a risk to that house. So that's one thing. So I can build a strong foundation, and the house doesn't always have to look the same. It can look modern, it could look classic, it could look crappy. But again, as long as the foundation is
My
good,
house.
the house, it can hold true. So one part of what FIT does is that foundation, and another part of what FIT does is sometimes try and make a little different house, and that's really the innovation side of what we do. And I'll bookend, I think this morning, I'm anticipating a question for Mary. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about the innovation side of what we're doing. But the standards are really the foundational part of what's happening. Several years ago, we went ahead and we revised some requirements that used to be issued by the GFMIP and Physio, and I still get a lot of feedback, not good feedback, about those requirements going away and everyone saying that they still have them in their desk, and I'm like, that's fine. That was the first step to go towards more of an outcome-oriented world. But what we realized is that without those requirements, which often got misinterpreted, we didn't have a good way to communicate with one another about our business. And one of the changes we decided to make is say, we still need these requirements, even in the format that people said they don't like. I'll tell you why they're important in a second. But let's start doing things in a way that we can generate a conversation between people. And that conversation that we usually have is we sit around and we tell stories. And that's how we relate to one another. So the second thing we said is, let's try a little different way to do this. And rather than saying, I need the ability to consolidate 2 obligations together or 2 commitments to create a purchase order, whatever those things are, let's put things in terms of a process. And oftentimes we talk about our end-to-end processes, record to report, procure to pay, and that's how we began to tell the story. And we tied those processes back to the outcomes. Now, the neat thing about the outcomes is that they all got reference to all the laws and regulations that you needed to be aware of. So if you had to make a payment, we reference all the things that are related to a payment and guidance. And then we created our story, and you can tie these things back and forth to one another. So I can tell the story, and I can also tell you where I got kind of the rules of the story. But another part of this that was important was the data itself. So I could have a good process, and we could all define the data differently. So who here ever does anything with prompt payment? Who knows anything about prompt payment? Who thinks that everybody in DHS does prompt payment the same?
I can assert to no on that question, sir.
So do I do that? So sometimes I might do prompt payment because things aren't the same. But really the change is that I define things differently in prompt payment. So what is the invoice received date? And what is the date stamp that it came in? And what is the 30-day clock date? We all look at these data elements, and what we found is that we all define them slightly differently. So what we said is, hey, let's work on the data a little bit. Now, fortunately, we had a lot of work that had already been done by the government overall with the Data Act. And then Treasury actually has gone through an effort over the years to publish all the data elements that we require when you're submitting information to us or that we send back to you, or almost all. So we had a lot of work there, and we said, we need to do a little bit more work to see if we got mostly everything. And the good news is that we did. And those pieces of, or those materials really represent the corpus of what the standards in financial management are. Now, these are not shared service standards. They're not necessarily financial system standards. They are financial management standards. So regardless of what application you use, or regardless of who's delivering the service to you, we need to know these foundational elements, and they're common to everybody. And one of our opportunities right now is to make sure that we begin to speak to groups like you, maybe in smaller audiences, to communicate how you need to use these standards in your work itself, beyond maybe just the financial system. And that's something, hopefully over the next year, that we'll be doing a little bit more actively and individually with agencies. So that's really the work that's been going on in that standards world. The last part is governance. So under the JFMIP and the Physio organization, there was a lot of governance that went around the standards themselves. And that really kind of fell off the face of the earth for a while. OMB at one point tried to create some product groups where they got together, but they also kind of fizzled out. But we still felt that it was important to have a dialogue with the financial management community about the standards themselves. What should be a standard, what shouldn't be a standard, if something's new, how do I get that into our environment or into our materials? And we've stood up what we're calling the Financial Management Standards Committee. So the Financial Management Standards Committee is a group of folks. So there's an executive group, which Stacy Marcotte sits on, and they, from agencies, and they lead major initiatives or major activities for our Financial Management Standards Committee. So Stacy and Jeff Bobbich have been leading a group related to software as a service, but also the standards themselves. And we have a work group of roughly 70 people across the government that we got on the phone with every week, and we talk about data standards or even sometimes the assessment tool that OSSPI, did I get that right? OSPI issues as well. So that's one part of that dialogue, to make sure that we get input from the government overall on the standards that we are introducing, or if there's any changes that need to occur. We're actually monitoring legislation on a monthly basis now to say, hey, did anything pop up here now that I need to be responsible for? There's three other groups that are really what the product group. So we have an Oracle group, we have an SAP group, and we have a Momentum group representing the three major financial system products in the government. And those groups get together and they talk about things that are common to them. So in one case, when the GTAS implementation was occurring, there were some different ways to implement GTAS in some of the products. So what's happened is some of the products some of the agencies have used what I'll call the innate features of the software and didn't make any changes. But by doing so, there was a lot of manual workarounds that had to occur. Some agencies did what we often say we don't want them to do, is build an extension. So the extension, in effect, automated it for the other agencies. And maybe the better way is that we all got together as a government and sat down and went back to Oracle and said, we need some changes. And that's what these groups are intended to do, which is to sit down together, figure out areas of common need, whether problems or things that they would be looking for in the future, and have a discussion about it. And then get a sense of whether any other agency in the government is having a similar problem that we need to fix. And so now we've created that dialogue with those groups. And then quarterly, we get together actually with the deputy CFOs from the agencies, and we share information about the different things that are happening. And that's really kind of how that governance works. So again, talked to you a little bit about FIT and the standards work, and then a little bit of the innovation stuff. Talked a little bit about the standards and why we believe they're important. And then lastly, that there is governance that would basically determine how we would adjust any of those standards moving forward.
Thank you, Adam. So I always say almost every day to Christine that I think she has the biggest job in the whole wide world, because she is the conduit, the facilitator of all of this stuff, and how it translates to all of the components and how your voices are heard upwards on all of this. So we know shared services for DHS hasn't been a nice, smooth, straight, even path. It's been a little bumpy. And we know that we're a part of all of this standard solutions development. What I'm interested in hearing from you about, Christine, is what are we doing? We've talked about a 10 to 15-year vision government-wide. What are we doing for the next 10 to 15 years in this standardized business process development, and how it kind of fits into this bigger picture as we modernize our solutions across the department?
Absolutely. So we do leverage all of the information and data that comes from all three of these organizations. But as far as our systems, yes, we are currently using 7 different financial management solutions within the department. And as Andrea referred to it, the sledgehammer of the federal SSPs, we certainly took a blow from that. But the vision was sound, you know, the economies of scale and standardization. And out of that, we do have an operational system. But when it comes to standards, we were directing the components bend to the solution. That was our standardization. So it wasn't about us defining the system, process flows, or business processes. We were telling the components, we're going to federal shared service providers, you will bend to that solution. So that was sort of driving our standards at first. But going forward, as we pull away from the federal SSP model, we now need to look inside DHS to standardize. And again, 7 different systems, and some within the components, even using the same system, have different business processes. So certainly we did start, and we've provided significant input to the use cases. But within the Joint Program Management Office that Mary had mentioned, we do have a branch called the Business Transformation Branch, which is led by Heather Straub. We took a step back, even further back from the use cases. We actually needed a common taxonomy. We didn't even speak the same language when it came to financial management and the business processes. So we did stand up a working group comprised of all of the components to have a voice at the table to first standardize the taxonomy when it came to the business processes, so we can all speak the same language. And that was our starting point. And then from there, we also had working groups that aligned with the use cases that we were reviewing from Adam's group that were coming down. And again, we were leveraging those same folks, so we were tying them together. The outcome of these efforts, we actually have now 10 DHS end-to-end business processes. We used to have 9. So we have updated our end-to-end business processes that align with the Treasury use cases. And from there, we're working with the components to understand their current business processes, the taxonomy and how we convert to that, but then where can we standardize? So within the Joint Program Management Office, we have added 4 architects, and we are leveraging tools now to look at what you do today. Let's look at what's common, and then let's look at what's unique and where can we build efficiencies. So if we're looking at 7 or 8 different processes, which one is the most efficient? And can we bend to that common process, or is there a reason it's unique? Is it system dependent? So we have stood up 10 working groups for the 10 end-to-end business processes. These working groups are comprised and led by the components. This is your voice. You're helping drive the standards in the department for the business processes. Really what we're doing is helping communicate that to the DHS leadership as well as our external stakeholders, but we can't do this without you being at the table. As far as the other areas, the framework that Andrea spoke to, for ICE and customers in FEMA, we have a separate working group in which we are building our own FSM framework. So certainly within DHS, we have our own processes, the acquisition lifecycle framework, the SELC process. So we have to follow those. So we're building our own FSM framework that takes all 3 of these into consideration, our SELC, the ALF, as well as the M3 framework, so that we can chart a path and a plan forward for ICE, the customers, and FEMA. So we're working on that to help them move forward in parallel to doing the business process standardization. The product working groups, the components attend the product working groups. Right now within the department, of course, we have Oracle,